Roberts,
Here.
Mr. Cronteras,
Here.
Miss Andress, Mr. Broadhead, Mr. Armstead.
Here.
Broadhead's here.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Respinto. Mr. Harwell,
Here.
Miss Wilcott,
Here.
Mr. Wilson.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Fred. Moving along, the next item is the approval of the April minutes. I've had a chance to review. They look fine to me. Does anyone else have any changes or comments on the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes with a couple of addendums. I'd like to make a quick comment. In light of Mr. Goodwin's minutes typically being a summary fashion, I wanted to just be able to make a comment, that's all, but I think it's important to enumerate two things. And the spirit of these is that, first of all, I think that the dignity of the past, present, and future members of the Planning Commission needs to be, or cannot be overstated, that we should be protecting the city. We are. It's a hard job. We're very passionate about what we do. Sometimes we have confrontational discussions, and we wouldn't be good leaders if we didn't. The two things I'd like to amend are specific to my comments in the summary. One being the sort of motivation from multiple members of the Planning Commission in February of 2020 to table this item for the downtown rezone until after the Valley Hotel was operational in order to have a parking and traffic study completed. It was only stated in the minutes that we wanted to table it. And specifically, it was until after the Valley Hotel was operational. The second thing is that there have been a couple of inferences about the Planning Commission violating statutory obligations in the Code of Alabama. The way I read it, we did not. I say that because I don't see that there is a time frame that's stated in the code for when our report and recommendation is due. And the fact is the study has not been completed for the traffic and parking that members were interested in seeing. I think that if we had violated a statute, it would have been incumbent on the city's attorney to let us know directly within a very short period of time that that had happened, and that didn't happen. So I would like to move that we approve the minutes with those two points of addendum.
Are you requesting that the language be changed to delete references to statutory obligations and that sort of stuff? That's
You're welcome to include a summary of what I just said.
Okay.
But I'd like for it to be included as two separate items. One is that the intent by multiple members of the Planning Commission in February 2020 was to table the item for the downtown rezone until after the Valley Hotel was operational and a traffic and parking study was completed. The second part is that the Code of Alabama, the inference that the Code of Alabama statute was violated is improper. I don't believe we did, because I don't believe that there's a time limitation within the code.
Okay. All right.
Period.
Thank you.
And I guess from a procedure standpoint, should we just carry over the minutes to allow those changes to be made and reviewed by the members?
Yeah, we can recirculate those amended minutes so
Great.
that the planning commissioners can see the language and see if that's acceptable. We sure can. Sure.
Okay. Next item, communications from the chair and the vice chair. Mr. Wilson, do you have any communications? The only thing I would have is our meeting tonight. We have kind of a split planning commission. We have half of our members roughly here and half of them on Zoom. So just everyone kind of let's try to avoid talking over each other. It's going to be something very easy to do in this circumstance, but hopefully we'll make it work. We are going to address, even though I think it's probably old business, we're going to address the downtown zoning plan last in the order, and then start out with new business, and then address that. Finally, the agenda referenced updates to the Planning Commission's bylaws and rules of procedure, and it's our recommendation, my recommendation to carry that over. We haven't really finished the draft revisions yet, so we'll just focus tonight on the new cases, and then we'll deal with our new business rather than we'll deal with the downtown district zoning.
Would you like to go ahead and announce that 275 case has been withdrawn? So
Oh, sure, yeah,
in case anyone
yeah.
was listening, they wouldn't sit through it.
Thank you. Yes, the second case on the list tonight, the 275 Lakeshore Parkway case, it's a resurvey, RS 21-0502, has been withdrawn. They carry it over, or has it just been withdrawn altogether?
They requested withdrawal altogether.
Okay, so they withdrew that. Okay. All right. So let's then go to new business. The first case is RS 21-05-01. It's a resurvey involving 211 and 301 Starrett Avenue. The applicant is Ray Wagand. And Mr. Wagand, Mr. Wagand, if you're here to speak to
No,
this.
The owner will be presented the case.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my name's Robert Adams. I live at 211 Starrett Avenue, and my neighbor, Herb Griffin, has agreed to sell me a portion of his lot beside us. He kind of has like a double lot, basically, and so he's agreed to do that, and so we are requesting to approve this resurvey to move the lot line. We don't want to split the lots. We want to combine it, the new footage, with our lot, so that's what this request is for.
Okay, well, this is a public hearing. If anyone from the public would like to speak to this, this is your opportunity. We'll start with people who are present here now, and then if no one, or once we're finished with that, or if no one wants to speak, we'll go to the Zoom audience. So anyone present now want to speak to this case? Okay. If you're on Zoom and you want to speak to this case, I think just unmute your microphone and announce your name and address. We'll give you a minute or two. If not, then we'll just move on to the questions for the applicant. Brian, do you see any indications of anyone wanting to speak to this?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. Okay, we'll close the public portion, and then Mr. Adams, if you come back up and answer any questions you have from the commission.
Mr. Adams, you live currently, right, on Starrett Avenue?
Yes, that's correct.
And I mean, the discussion in the work meeting was that it didn't appear that you were intending to make any changes currently, but your intent is to live there.
Yes, so the intent for the extra footage is we'll probably add on to our house in the near future, and Mr. Griffin knows that, and so that's part of the intent, and also to have a little more property for our kids to play on. They currently play in that lot a lot, which Mr. Griffin allows. So.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. And that tree you have in between your lots, is that, I know you don't, I don't know if you have plans yet for adding onto your house, is your intention to keep that tree?
Yes, that's a very much part of my intention. We wanted to make sure the new lot line was on the other side so that we could take care of it. We love that tree. It's a beautiful tree and adds to the neighborhood. So yeah, plans to keep that, definitely.
Glad to hear. Any other questions? Okay. I will entertain a motion to approve case RS 21-05-01.
Motion to approve RS 210501.
Second.
Okay, so Mr. Wilson with the motion, Mr. Armstead with the second. We call the roll, please.
All right. Mr. Cronteras,
Unmute, John.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Yes, all right. Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Armstead,
Yes.
Mr. Harwell,
Yes.
Ms. Wilcutt,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
and has any other members that when I first called out joined us, or?
Brandon and I are both here.
Okay. All right,
But yes.
yes, all right, thank you. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Adams, your case passes.
And Brandon Broadhead is here as well.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay, next case is RS 21-05-03. It's another resurvey involving 185 and 195 Oxmoor Road. The applicant is Joseph Hethcox. Mr. Hethcox, I believe you're on Zoom, is that correct?
Yes, he's on Zoom.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct. I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, if you would just tell us about your case.
All right, I'll make it as quick as possible. When I purchased that property a few years ago with the plans to develop it as it was, with the rules that they have for that district now, with redoing 50% of the building, I was gonna need to bring something up to the street, whether outdoor seating or extending the building. Unfortunately, the way my lot is, the entrance would run into the building that way. So I had an issue with ingress, egress. I was gonna move the entrance over to the opposite side of my property, but then that ran into my parking. There's a grass area between my property of 185 Oxmoor, and then the next is Fitness, which I think is 187 Oxmoor. That grass property was owned by Shaw LLC, which is the owners of the hotel, the Econo Lodge, which is who I'm working with on this. When I approached them about purchasing that grass piece between me and the gym, eventually they have a piece of unused property behind my property and behind their property, and we decided to throw this all in as one. So if I develop my property, this will allow me to add parking, which is obviously a huge issue over there. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so if you would like to speak to this case, again, we'll start with the people who are here and then move along to the people participating by Zoom. So anyone here present right now would like to speak to this case? Okay, seeing no one, let's go to Zoom. As I said before, if you'd like to speak to this case, please unmute your microphone and share your comments.
Not seeing anybody.
All right, thanks, Brian. Okay, we'll close the public portion of the case. Mr. Hethcox, I apologize. I don't think I caught a few of the things you said at the very beginning, but then the quality got a little better. And you might have covered this in your comments, but what is, I believe this is the old Waffle House location, is that correct?
That's correct.
What is your plan, your current plan for this property?
So if I can get this rezoning done, the ultimate plan would be to tear down the Waffle House building, to create, or to construct a new building on the opposite side of where the Waffle House building sits now. And by doing this, that allows me the space that I need between myself and the gym. And then it would give me a parking lot of possibly 40 to 41 spaces.
So it's just flipped to the closest to the Nexus building, fitness building, and okay. Any intent or any idea of what sort of building you might construct?
Not yet, but it would be something that fits the district. I would be thinking of, possibly a restaurant, and maybe a couple of other things. I don't have specifics, but obviously it would go to fit the West Homewood district.
Retail?
Correct.
Okay, any other questions from the commission? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve case RS 21-05-03.
Motion to approve 21, RS 210503.
I second.
Okay, Mr. Wilson with the motion, Mr. Contreras with the second.
Okay,
Call the roll, please.
all right. Mr. Contreras,
Yes.
Mr. Broadhead, Ms. Andress,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Armstead,
Yes.
Mr. Harwell,
Yes.
Ms. Wilcutt,
Yes.
and Mr. Roberts.
Yes. Mr. Hethcox, your case passes.
Okay.
Okay, the last item tonight is a vote on the downtown rezoning plan that came out of the Heart of Homewood Master Plan. As many of you recall, this case was heard last by this commission. Susan Henderson from Placemakers, the subcontractor to the Regional Planning Commission of Greater Birmingham, presented that night. We had a full public comment that was closed, and shortly thereafter, a motion was made to table the case for further discussion, and that motion was seconded and then ultimately passed. At our meeting last week, a motion was made to withdraw or untable this case for a vote in the May 2021 meeting. Therefore, where we are posturally is this case is ready for a vote. I would, before we vote, ask if anyone present on the commission has any additional comments before we take a motion.
Is not going to be any more public comment?
Public comment is closed on this case.
This is unbelievable.
Mr. Chairman, I think that the only thing I'd like to make a comment about is the medium density, part of the discussion that really was not had on the medium density that potentially invites an increase in multifamily housing that the planners again inferred last year that that's more of a 30-year plan, a 30-year process, and I think what it does is potentially opens up the concern for overburdening our schools, our fire, and our police, and that's why my vote will be to not recommend the downtown rezone.
Anyone else have comments?
I do. This is Paige. Is there are we gonna go forward with like a parking study, now that the hotel's open?
Ms. Wilcutt, that's certainly an item of discussion, and that's something that certainly could be part of our recommendation. We certainly can't force anything on the city council one way or the other, but if we were to vote in favor of this, we could do it with the additional recommendation that a parking management plan and parking study be conducted and funded by the city, so that any necessary adjustments could be made to the plan. And I'll just add, and I think this is something Ms. Henderson discussed with us when we had our work meeting earlier last week, is that this, downtown zoning or zoning for the entire city is always something that can be amended, based on what we observe and based on what we see. So this is a vote tonight to approve a plan or to recommend a plan one way or the other to the city council, up or down. But bear in mind that ultimately, both the city council could change what's in the plan, or also down the road we could make recommendations to change other things about this plan to address concerns that might arise over time.
Chairman Roberts, if you don't mind, I would mention that I spoke with President Wyatt at the council last night, and that he is planning on having several public discussions where he's inviting the public to come speak to the council. It'll be on multiple occasions, and we will publicize it greatly and widely. So this is not the end of public comment. I just want to make that known to everyone, that just you know, it leaving the planning commission does not mean the discussion with the public has ended. And we can, as you said, we can take up, you know, recommendations from here, we can take up recommendations from those public discussions that happen. We can, you know, make changes, we can make, you know, improvements, we can make clarifications, so, you know, this is still this always will be a living document. That is the thing that, you know, I wanna stress, that we make changes to the zoning code all the time. But this, in it, you know, whatever we do tonight, you know, we are still working on this, and we are still hearing from the public, and we are still engaging with the public, so just know that's coming, if that helps anybody.
Mr. Chairman, during the last meeting, I had questions about whether I could get my hands around all the details associated with this plan. And I appreciate you and the city for arranging a meeting with the consultant and allow us to have some work session to better understand the issues at play. Had a chance to read both the existing ordinance as well as the proposed ordinance. And one of the things that I came away from it in looking at as it currently sits versus what we've got here is, while this new plan isn't perfect and there's a lot of things that I'd like to change on it, it's substantially better than the existing plan that we've got, and that the existing plan has a lot more concern, well, the ability to somebody to build something that in my mind would be detrimental to the city of Homewood, namely an 11-story building, is currently allowed in the existing zone. So in an effort to not let a perfect idea be the opposite of good, it's better to us, in my mind, that we move forward, recommend this plan that fixes a lot of problems, and allow us to address finer elements of the plan going forward that we may want to revise, but it prevents the things to me that would be most catastrophic, would be overdevelopment of downtown, and by overdevelopment being more than the 4 or 5-story buildings that we have right here. The other thing that was to me that I spent a decent amount of time digging into was really trying to understand the parking requirements that are currently in place, parking requirements that are in this proposed, as well as the parking needs of downtown. And as being a resident here, being a business owner that's downtown, I see it every day. And in digging into it and talking to a number of experts in the field, I think there is a sense that well, everybody agrees we have a parking problem. The question is, how do you solve the parking problem? Is that parking problem solved by requiring businesses to have more new parking, or is it better solved by managing the existing parking we have, et cetera? So, and one of the other concerns that, in talking to other experts in the field, is that we can, if we have too stringent of parking requirements, we end up with bigger other problems that we don't want, where buildings get raised, buildings get used for parking, not for uses that or don't fit in with the neighborhood there. So to me, I think my support of moving forward or recommending this is based purely upon the idea that we can also tie with it, city engage a parking engineer to conduct a comprehensive parking study that looks at the existing uses, the existing turnover, how the city can better manage the parking that it has.
And I can say, and I know Ms. Andress can speak to this better than I can, I know the city's been looking at parking for a while, but you know, certainly there can be improvements made, and I would tend to agree that you know, that needs to be an emphasis sooner rather than later.
We can certainly address that at the council level. You know, as I mentioned, I'll just mention for the minutes, we discussed last week some of the things that, you know, we're looking at. I will, again, I would be remiss if I did not mention the parking deck that is open. I know for some reason, you know, people are hesitant to use that parking deck. I'm really not sure why. It's open all the time. I pulled up for lunch at 12 o'clock noon on Friday, and people were circling the upper, you know, surface lot. And I went straight down, pulled in, you know, didn't have to, there was nobody even parked near me to get out of my car. So that is, we have just added recent parking up on 29th, up by Real and Rosemary and Urban Cookhouse. You know, one of the things I've talked about wanting to do for the next budget year is working on a mid-block crossing across 28th where the Arc Realty is to connect to Soho, so folks can get more easily from that area of downtown, which is starting to really blossom. We've got parking coming on the west side of 18th as soon as we finish working through our temporary construction easements that we're trying to obtain. And once we do that, we can start construction, and you'll see, you know, parking spaces added there. You know, we have a city engineer or an engineer rather, that we work with on a regular basis who has recommended, you know, some parking on the north side of Soho, kind of to mirror what's on the south side of Soho. So we do have things that we're working on. We've got that, you know, police station parking lot that's open with a 3-hour limit. You know, we put some signage there so everyone knows that they can park there. So we do know, we talk about it all the time, and certainly, you know, we can continue that conversation just ongoing.
Does anyone else want to comment on this case before entertaining a motion?
I'll just say that we're clearly in need of a parking management plan or parking study. But to Mr. Harwell's earlier comments, you know, holding up this entire plan when there's a lot of benefit in the zoning and use portions of it doesn't make a lot of sense. So that, you know, that really would be the reasons why I would support it. And then just knowing that we can make further enhancements in the future, and obviously this going to the council are really elements of this that shouldn't be forgotten. So you know, that's pretty much all.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is John Frontiers. A comment I want to make is that missing a parking study, and the latest development that there's going to be a development pretty soon at where Jim is. You know, I don't see how can anyone vote in favor of this unless a parking study has happened first.
Thank you, Mr. Contreras. Anyone else? Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve this case, and certainly would entertain a motion to further recommend as part of our vote, or that the city look at, expeditiously look at addressing parking issues, looking at a parking management plan, et cetera. So,
Yeah, I'll make a motion that the planning commission recommend to the city council to approve the proposed rezoning plan, provided they engage doing a comprehensive parking study that includes a parking management plan.
do we have a second?
I'd second that.
Okay. All right, I guess we're ready for, I'm sorry, Mr. Harwell with the motion, Mr. Armstead with the second. Right. Call the roll, please.
Okay. Mr. Cronteras,
No.
Ms. Andress,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
No.
Mr. Armstead,
Yes.
Mr. Harwell,
Yes.
Ms. Wilcutt,
No.
and Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
4-3.
Is Mr.
And I will tell you that Lieutenant Broadhead is on.
I'm on and ready to vote.
I'm sorry, Mr. Broadhead. All right, did you hear that discussion on the downtown zoning? You were present to hear
Did
that?
hear.
You did hear it? All right. And how would you vote on that motion?
Yes.
Yes, okay. 5-3.
Okay, so that will go to the city council with a 5-3 recommendation, along with the recommendation that the city engage in a parking management, or parking study and parking management plan as soon as possible. So, I think that's the last of our business for tonight, so I'll entertain, unless anyone else has any comments, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yes, I'm sorry, I just want to say that I called Battalion Chief Broadhead Lieutenant, and I want to apologize. I just absolutely am embarrassed. I'm sorry. Chief Broadhead, I apologize.
Motion to adjourn.
I'm used to it by now.
Mr. Made a motion to adjourn.
And second from Mr. Wilson.
Okay. All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.